So I have gone through numerous different situations for my whole life, and I'm now 50. So long, long time, right? Of trying to find this blend of fun, something I like, helping others, making money. And I've been able to find a bit and a piece and a bit and a piece of all those things, but really getting it all together was really hard.
Welcome to Mindset Mastery Podcast, where we explore the intersections of motherhood and entrepreneurship. I'm your host, Julissa Edwards, and in each episode, we're diving into mindset, emotional regulation, and the real stories of mom entrepreneurs navigating both business and family life. Let's get into it. Welcome back to another episode on Mindset Mastery. I am so excited. Today was such a wholesome conversation. This is, again, a complete stranger that I got to know on the podcast. And wow, I'm so grateful that my podcast, my business allows me to meet people in this fashion. So as you guys know, we're doing a whole series on interviewing mamas that are also entrepreneurs. Today, I have the pleasure of interviewing Kristin McDonough. She is the owner and founder of Meal Prep Mama LLC, helping people feed their families well with gluten-free, organic, healthy, homemade meals prepped and ready for the oven or crock pot or freezer delivered to your door. She is a wife and a mama to a 9-year-old boy, and she has loved preparing food for others since she was a kid in the kitchen with her mother. The beginning of this episode, her why, all of that has just been so beautiful to hear, to interview. I think Kristin is a prime example of the real reality of juggling both business and motherhood, like both together and also separately. She's a woman that is so wise. She's very grounded, and you can tell, you'll see in the episode, but you can see that she is grounded because of all the work, the inner work, the mindset work, the healing, the therapy that she has put in for years prior. And it's a beautiful recognition that nothing is ever perfect. Truly, nothing is ever perfect. And that if you were even thinking about bettering your mindset via motherhood, via business, or both, this is the episode to tap into. So I really hope you guys enjoy it. I had I don't even want to say I had fun. My soul is enriched from this conversation. And so yeah, without further ado, enjoy this episode. So Kristin, what made you want to open up this kind of business?
Well, I think I have, since I was little, I have wanted to have my own business. Literally, since I can remember. My nephew was hurt in a car accident when he was really little, and I think I was like 10, and I helped the physical therapist all the time. So I have known, like, since I was a kid, that I wanted my own business.
Mm.
Um, because I wanted to help others. Like, that since I was little has happened. So I have gone through numerous different situations for my whole life, and I'm now 50. So long, long time, right? Of trying to find this blend of fun, something I like, helping others, making money. And I've been able to find a bit and a piece and a bit and a piece of all those things, but really getting it all together was really hard. Um,
Mm.
Really what happened, so I've always been looking, you hear a lot about what's your why? What's your why? Find your why. And that was
Yes.
just never really enough for me. I couldn't get down
Okay.
to a specific why.
Okay.
Um, and then this is maybe going deep already really fast, but
I love it.
my mom passed away like 2.5 years ago, and
Oh.
she had been suffering from Parkinson's for years, 8 years. And it really was at her service. And this seems like a little morbid, but when
Mm.
I looked at her, she had wanted to have a catering business her whole life. She cooked and we always had parties and things at our house, and she was always making the food, and food was like her thing.
Mhm.
And people were always, you need a business, you need a business. And she just never made the time. And I can remember looking at her and thinking, oh my gosh, I am not going to let life go, because she did. I mean, she didn't do that on purpose, right? But she did. She never got to do something that really was hers and that she really loved, right? So I can just remember looking at her and thinking, you know what? I'm going to do something. And at that moment, I wasn't sure it was food. So I started with a business coach and more about the why. And I thought, you know what? So many friends, the other little piece is that when I had a baby
Mhm.
9 years ago, almost 9 years in a couple weeks, uh,
Oh,
people did this meal train thing, right? And I thought, this is
yes.
ridiculous. I don't need a meal. How ridiculous. Like I'm a
Yeah.
doer. I do the things. I don't need to. But when
Mm.
that first person brought me a meal, I was like,
Oh,
oh, gloriousness. This is the best
yes.
thing that has ever happened to me.
Oh.
So through that, but then the meal train stops and you're
Mm.
still momming, you're still doing
Yes.
life, right?
Yes.
And so then I had friends who had like freezer meal parties, and we would all show up and everybody would bring 5 freezer meals and we would
Oh, that's
trade
awesome.
and
I
we would
love
go home with
that.
these freezer meals. But it
Yeah.
turns out I don't like freezer meals. So I would go 6 months and there would still be these meals in the freezer. So I started having meal prep get-togethers with my girlfriends, like just for
Wow.
fun, so that we could prep meals and have them ready. And eventually
Mm.
people were like, hey, you should do this. You should make them for me. I don't want to do this. So
Right.
that's kind of like a big long story,
I love it.
very short, how I
Yeah.
got to this place. I've always loved cooking with my mom, and that's kind of how I got there.
Yeah, I actually
I don't
love
know if
that.
that answers your question.
Yes, it does. I love that because so this show is all about, showcasing different entrepreneurs and everyone is different. For one
Right,
person to fit the mold, it's just not, we don't work that way. We're not robotic, we're
right.
different people. And so, yes, the concept of like having a why, it is important. I might be biased, but it's the reason why I love my background in like psychotherapy and
Mhm.
psychology because truthfully, like it's not a one size fits all formula for anything
Yeah.
because think about children, for example, like different learning, different ways that they learn, absorb information.
Mhm.
You have to treat students differently in a classroom. At least we're learning now, the more diverse a classroom
Right.
is, the better, the more resources, the better, because not everybody learns things in one way. So when the a lot of business coaches will be like, what is your why? And that is very important, but for everybody it can look different. So what I'm hearing is that, and I also read in your bio, which we'll get into probably now, that this is something that you wanted for yourself, which I think is probably maybe a big part of your why, right? That you wanted your own identity, something away from motherhood. And that's what I teach a lot of my clients in too, of like,
Mhm.
for me, motherhood has been absolutely the best gift I could have ever asked for, right? And at the same time, it is all encompassing. It can be so overwhelming, where you're so enamored with love
Yes.
for your child or children, and in some parts of the way, it's like a dip and ebbs and flowing in and out. You lose parts of yourself, right?
Yes.
And that's not a bad thing. It's part of the
Right.
process. I love it. It's a big journey of self-reflection.
Mhm.
And one of the things that have helped me immensely, me personally, is having my own business,
Mhm.
right? And I feel like you
Yeah,
can probably share the same sentiments.
absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, and it seems like when you're thinking about it from a logical standpoint, it seems like that would take away, right? But
Yes.
I
Yes.
think that when we are doing things that fill ourselves, right,
Yes.
we get to be so much more present at home. And I'll
Yes.
say too, I don't know, you'll probably get there, but we can just talk. I
Yeah.
um I love now that he's 9, right? He sees me doing work, right? And he sees me creating a business. He thinks it's like this really cool thing. He was like, Mom, we could start a cafe and you could do this over here and you could do this over here.
Oh, it's so
Just this
good.
idea that I am encouraging him, right? Go start your own thing, go do your own thing. It's
Yes.
okay to work and be a mom and be a wife.
Yes.
You can do, I don't like to say all of it because all of it gets really big, but right, you can do more
Yeah.
than one thing and it does
Yes.
fill me
Yes.
so that I can fill my family.
Yeah. We're multifaceted beings, is what I
We
always
are.
say. We have many different interests. And what I personally love about business in general for me as a mother is that it gets to be flexible and fluctuate as my children are growing up, right? So
Absolutely.
the demands of motherhood for me when they were newborns are so much different than what it is now. And because of that, my business gets to keep changing throughout their evolutions. And I feel like I couldn't be more blessed to have that flexibility.
Absolutely. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so back to your why, right? So
Yeah,
your why, you've always loved cooking for others, or you've always loved helping others. And so you were a natural supporter, natural caregiver, if I may, at a
for sure.
young early start. And then your mother passed away, which my deepest condolences to you and your family.
Thank you. But yeah.
Yes, of course. And that also gave you a light bulb moment of she
Yes.
never got to live out her dreams or something that she was naturally good at, that people
Yeah.
told her she should do, you'd be great at it, and just never was able to do that. And
Hmm.
so here you are with kind of a similar story of like, the meal train. And then I had these parties where me and my girls would gather up and we would meal prep. And it was like, I am naturally good, gifted at doing this, and passionate
Hmm.
about it,
Hmm.
right? For emotional reasons, which is important. And so it's
Yes.
like, yeah, why not make a business out of this?
Right.
I love
Yeah,
that.
and I mean, I really did. I thought, well, I'm just going to throw this out there kind of and see what happens. And it did. It went crazy, which was
Yeah.
amazing. And I think that when we are in our like a healthy mindset, right? And we're doing things that we should be doing, right? All of the sudden it does work, right?
Mhm.
And I was in a place you just mentioned with parenthood where my child was in, I only have one, and he was in second grade. Right. So he's pretty much gone for the day. And I
Mhm.
am not needing to do as much momming. I mean, they still need us, but not at the
Yes.
same level as
Yes.
when he was home all day and in
Yeah.
toddler stages. And right. And I got to do that. And I think for me too, this whole idea, I felt so blessed that my husband basically like takes care of the family and pays our bills and pays for the house and right does all that. And I
Yeah.
saw my mom and she was always having to like make the choice to have the secure job and this job and the thing that she could do to continue
Mhm.
supporting us, right? And I thought, wait a minute, I have the opportunity to go do something, right? So that was
Mhm.
really great
Yes,
for
please.
me.
Okay, I want to talk about that too because everybody's different. And sometimes I feel that people either have shame in admitting this or everyone just comes from different, economic backgrounds, and that's
Hmm.
okay.
Right.
Some people, have, I don't want to get, this is a mindset episode, I mean, podcast, so we can get into it, but this is all
Right.
mindset too of like scarcity versus abundance and what we feel like we really can do with our lives. And don't
Hmm.
get me wrong, financial stability is a necessity for
Right.
us to survive and be able
Hmm.
to think
Yeah.
about grand ideas and follow through with them. And then we also have other grand success stories of people who have their backs up against the wall and also come out with a beautiful business that ends up supporting them,
Absolutely. Hmm.
right? And for me, it's not really about the end goal, it's the journey.
Hmm.
I'm like, I know that's so cliche, but seriously, like, it's the journey of, motherhood. I think motherhood and business are very, very similar the way that I see it, in the
Hmm.
realms of it's a huge mirror that
Hmm.
lets you know who you really are.
Hmm.
And I don't mean that in a mean way, right? Like you face
Right.
grand adversities in motherhood and in
Mhm.
business. And it really showcases of like, well, what are you made of? Like, what are the
Mhm.
inner thoughts that come into your brain, into your heart when hardships show up? And how are you able to pick yourself back up? And what is your mindset? And are you self-compassionate towards yourself? Um, Business, if you can agree, you'd let me know if you agree or not. For me, it's been one of the most. So I began my business before I had my babies.
Mhm.
Right before they were almost synonymous, but like I launched in 2020 and I was pregnant at the end of 2020 with my
Okay.
firstborn son, Marcus.
Mhm.
So, but before the pregnancy, that first year, I always say for me at least, it's the easiest, but also the hardest because easy because there's no complications yet. You don't have a lot of clients. It's an
Yeah.
idea, it's just a thought. And the
Mhm.
scary part is putting it out there
Mhm.
and following through and continuing with your messaging over and over and over again, even when nobody bites,
Yeah.
right? And so it showed me a lot of, well, how much do I really believe in myself?
Mhm.
Right, to do this over and
Yeah.
over and over again. And in motherhood, I feel like the same similarities, like when you're a newborn or a first time mom, or have a newborn, I should say, my God, you lack sleep, all the hormones, you know, like, yeah, I thought heavily in that time of, wow, I give mothers so much credit.
Mhm.
Right. So can you see that? For me, I see a lot of similarities between business and motherhood as like it's a grand test, a beautiful journey
Oh
of
yeah.
who are you truly?
Mhm. I do see the similarities in motherhood and in entrepreneurship in particular, right?
Yes.
So many unknowns. And you
Yes.
are literally, I mean, I was actually the business coach I was working with. He was like, you just seem to be somebody who's like not going to put it all together first and then do this business. You're just going to do it. And I
Oh.
think the next morning I was like, I'm going to post in a Facebook group and see what happens. And it went, right?
Mm,
And I think being brave and being motherhood too, right? I don't know what I'm
yes.
doing the next day. Like they come home from the hospital and here you have this thing, and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to keep it alive, right? And it's
Yes.
hard.
Yeah.
I often tell people I wish I had a second one just because I'm like, oh wait, it was going to be okay, but it's so scary that first one, and
Yeah.
to keep just going. And I remember someone telling me early on, it doesn't get better because I would say, oh, it'll get better. And she said, no, it just gets different. And she's
Yes.
right, right? Like now I have a
Yes.
9-year-old who thinks he is going to run the world and tries to run the world in our house. And it's hard. It's very different
Challenging.
hard
Yeah.
than a newborn, but it's still hard, right? And in
Yeah.
business, I think when sales are going crazy, which my business has been pretty full since it started, and I was going to kind of
Congratulations.
do this little side gig and like, I'll just work twice a week during school hours and it'll be this cute little thing. And now it's a
Exploded.
full-time, no joke job. And I love
Look at
all of
that.
it. But I
Yeah.
mean, I'm trying to keep it in school hours, but it doesn't always stay in
Yes.
there. And I
Okay.
have to flux, just like having a child and adapting to new things. And
Yes.
I'm often switching hours, switching how many people I can work for me. I mean, you're just growing,
I was going to
always
ask if you had a
growing.
team. So you have a team that
Well,
helps you with the
sort
cooking?
of, yes. I mean, I do. I have a few people that help.
Okay.
As you can imagine, with a new business, I mean, I'm
How
making
many
enough that I
years
can
are
have a
you?
couple people, but I can't really give someone like a job.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah,
So there are the challenges with having a little help, but not too much help. And
yeah.
um,
Oh, thank you
yeah,
for I
growth.
love this conversation. So I think because people need to hear this. So a lot of my listeners are like on the verge of like, should I do this? Am I going to open a business?
Yes.
Right. And I think your vulnerability is teaching so many of us that it's not perfect, but you're making it work. Like, look, what a good problem to have. It's still a problem
But
that
it's
you're
still a
booked and
problem.
busy, that you're booked and busy. It's just a different kind of problem.
Mhm.
And that, yes, we're maybe, so tell me, how old is your business? How many years have you been running
So
it?
18 months.
Oh my God,
I know it's like new.
congratulations. Oh my God, and you're so booked and busy. Wow.
And
What
it was
advice, a good
almost from
problem
the
to have.
get-go. I
Yeah.
think as we're talking about mothers, right? It was this need that was so big. And I will say my business, as from a meal prep business, is a little bit different in that I also don't like reheated food. There's nothing wrong with it. All of you meal prep
Yeah.
people that are making these amazing, delicious things.
Yeah.
I actually am not a chef by trade. I just
Okay.
love to make food.
Okay.
So I actually don't cook the food. It's all prepped and ready to go. So it's like literally oven ready.
Mm.
Um, so it's a little different. So I have most of my clients want to cook a little bit, they want to be showing their family that they're cooking and whatever, but they're
Mm.
also busy working moms and they
Yes.
don't really have the time. So this way
Yes.
they still get to put things in the oven and be putting together a meal, but
Yes.
without doing all the cutting and the
All the
shopping and the
legwork.
stuff. So it's a little different. But anyway,
Mm.
so when I put it out in these mom groups in my neighbor, I mean,
It just went off.
it was just a need, right? And I met a need. It wasn't that I was doing anything so amazing.
Yes.
But I did. I stuck it out there and there it went, right? So I did have to adapt. I
Mm.
mean, I really was gonna like I was like, oh, if I could just make 10 meals a week or 10 families a week, I meant like
Mm.
25 a week.
Wow.
So it went big fast. Um,
Mhm.
which is amazing. But I think the biggest struggle, I think, as a mom and an entrepreneur is finding the balance in between those two things, right?
Yes.
I, in my healthy place, that's all good, right? When I'm
Mhm.
not paying attention and balancing, I'm like all entrepreneur or all mom or
Yeah.
all wife. And
Yes.
balancing that, I think, is the biggest. battle.
Yeah. I had a friend ask me the other day, she was like, when I'm at work, I'm thinking about my baby. And when I'm with my baby, I'm thinking about work. And she was like, how do I make this better? I'm like, for me, I'm like, it's like meditation. Like,
Hmm.
like you close your eyes, you try to do the
Yep.
thing, and like then your mind wanders and you're like, hey, pull it back.
Hmm.
Right. It's just, it's a constant practice. It's not that
Hmm.
it gets just like motherhood, like you were saying earlier,
Right.
doesn't get easier. You just get more of a veteran status of
Yeah.
expecting things to just kind of be, I don't want to say chaotic,
Hmm.
to sound discouraging, but you just get you gain mastery over balancing a lot of different plates.
Hmm. And I think balancing this whole idea, or mastering was a good word, this idea that it's going to be okay, right?
Yes.
And so, for example, sometimes I typically deliver 3 meals on Mondays, so they have a choice. But sometimes motherhood gets in the way, right? And
Mhm.
whatever, I have a sick kid and it's me, and I've got like a helper or two, but I don't have someone that's just going to go run my business. And
Mhm.
and being able to email my list of clients and say, hey, guess what? You're only going to get 2 meals
Mhm.
this Monday, but
Mm.
they're going to be okay, right? And
Yes.
I have to adapt to that, right? But it's
Yes.
okay. I'm not bringing them nothing.
Let's talk about that. So honesty and vulnerability. I think as small business owners, we have the luxury that maybe we don't always see it in the beginning, that we can be, and we kind of should be brutally honest about where we're
Hmm.
at, because we don't have 1,000 team members, or not even 10.
Correct.
Like it's really like solo entrepreneurship. It's like me and I got 2 helpers, which
Yeah.
I am so grateful for.
Yeah.
But even in that, it took time for me to master delegation, how much, I could really put on their plates at any given time, how many
Hmm.
projects was too many projects. Like I had to learn all of that.
Hmm.
And so I love what you said about like you have some helpers, like two, I think you said 2 people or so that can help you with cooking.
Hmm.
But right now you're so young. So I'm literally
Yeah.
give you so much credit, like young in the business of like 18
Yes,
months, like
it is
you're
young.
doing phenomenal. Where it's like when it sounds like when it's too much, I have my helpers, but I don't maybe have enough right now to always keep them on board.
Correct. Right.
Yeah.
And their schedules are often off. I mean, as you know, like an employee, right? I mean, I have a mom who has 3 kids. I mean, if her kids are sick, I mean, she's home with her kids too, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So like those people have lives too, because it is, well, like you were saying, it's a small business. I haven't hired
Yeah.
someone that I'm paying them a salary where they have to show up at work. I'm
Correct. Correct.
paying somebody enough and giving
Yeah.
them a few hours, right, to make some extra income. I'm not
Yes.
still supporting someone's family, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
their life comes first, right? And it
Of course.
should,
Yes.
but that can throw it off, right? So, and I will say, if I can give anyone some advice, and it can be really hard, but I have been brutally honest from the get-go with clients.
Mhm.
And maybe it's a little easier because most of my clientele are
Moms.
moms, right?
Yes.
So they
Yes.
get
They get it.
that, oh, my kid had to be picked up from practice because my husband had to go out of town, or whatever the situation might be, that all of a
Mhm.
sudden life happened. And
Yeah.
they're generally pretty understanding. But I do feel like whatever the situation is, when I'm honest, they know that that's what's really happening, right? And they can
Mhm.
understand instead of, oh, blah, 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 right? Whatever the situation may be. But it has been,
Yeah.
they have been so supportive
Yes.
instead of
Yeah.
feeling like it's just a chaotic mess.
Yeah. Hey mamas, real quick, are you trying to juggle motherhood and that burning desire to launch your business? Well, I've got something just for you. I'm hosting a free webinar that dives deep into how you can master motherhood and entrepreneurship. Yes, you can do both. I'll be sharing the same actionable steps that I've used to help countless moms launch their businesses while staying grounded and connected to their families. If you've been feeling the pull to start that business and you don't know where to begin, or you're struggling to balance it all, this webinar is for you. In this webinar, we'll unpack those mindset blocks, get you calm, confident, and ready to thrive as a mom and a business owner. Head to the show notes to save your seat. It's totally free. You don't want to miss this. Let's do this together, mama. Join the webinar. The link is in our show notes. I'm going to bring a good mindset or perspective
Yeah.
on the topic because so I went from traditional therapy. I used to see like 40 clients a week. I used to work
Hmm.
for an agency or a private practice, and I would see
Hmm.
clients that way. And then when I ventured out on my own business, it was an opportunity for me to learn boundaries, vulnerability, like sharing more with my clientele of like my life. Like I was pregnant, then I had a newborn, and because I became a coach and the rules from therapy to coaching were a lot looser,
Hmm.
I could share more about my personal life, which I personally loved. And
Yes.
so I remember like the feeling of I could never, like, I remember being pregnant with my son Marcus and still juggling my 9 to 5 while building my business. And
Hmm.
I was just, I think I was like 2 months pregnant that first trimester. You're just so tired. And first time I'm like, I didn't even know what to expect,
Right.
and so I am someone who is very diligent, like very type A when it comes to work. Like I deem myself to be a pretty responsible person.
Hmm.
And I overslept for a call.
Hmm.
Like, that never in my life has that ever
Hmm.
happened. And I
Hmm.
remember waking up, her call was at 4. It was like 4:15. I overslept on my nap because I was so exhausted in between
So
client
tiring.
calls. And I remember waking up and I had so much shame of
Mm.
like, what do I say? Do I lie to her? Do I say it was an emergency? Like, what do I even say? And
Right.
this was again a client from somebody else that I was working for. And I remember texting her and saying, like, I was just honest. And I was like, oh
Mhm.
my God, I'm so sorry. So sorry. I overslept. And it's not that she didn't take it well, but to her defense, she didn't have context as to
Right.
like why. Like just
Mhm.
hearing that text, it could have probably seemed really irresponsible, which I completely understand from her perspective.
Right.
Had I been more comfortable with myself and where I was at in life, I would have told her, like, I'm pregnant. And yeah, I overslept, and maybe she would have had grace, maybe she wouldn't have. But the point of what I'm trying to make here is in the beginning of my business, I had the hard lesson of learning that if I was going to make it, I really had to be open and vulnerable with what was happening because I am a small business.
Right.
Where in the beginning, because I was so trained from like a regular 9 to 5 to not share anything,
Mhm.
even in the first year of my business, I also kept it quiet when I didn't have to. I,
Right.
and so for me, learning that was hard. But
Mhm.
now that I have clients that are moms, even the ones that aren't moms, they get it, they understand, and they have grace and compassion. And what I've learned in my own journey, and I wonder if it's the same for you, is we're usually the only ones holding ourselves back from compassion, support, vulnerability. We put ourselves into boxes where we think we can't. And I understand that in some places you really, quote unquote, shouldn't. But
Mhm.
we're usually holding ourselves back from the kind of support that we're able to have and the grace that we can have for ourselves in
Mhm.
something so ever changing like motherhood and business.
Mhm. Yes, I agree. I have to say that I can think of several times where something has come up. I've forgotten to put something in their bags. I mean, like literally just forgot to put a
Mm,
sauce in all the bags, right? And I
mm.
did have a moment of like, do I say anything? Do I not? And in those times where I've chosen to just put it out there and send the email one
Mhm.
more time that I don't want to send,
Yeah.
the amount of compassion that has been able that and the grace I've been given has been
Yes.
amazing, right? And I
Yeah.
think we can get caught up in a world where we think that it's not graceful and not compassionate. And if you really put yourself out there, it's a pretty compassionate world,
It's a
right?
pretty
I think
compassionate world.
I think it can feel
Yes.
really negative a lot these days, and it's
Yes.
really not. I find that the more I put it out there, the more people have the ability to then say, hey, it's okay, right? But if you don't give
Yes.
them that choice, they can't
Yes.
say it's okay. That has
Yes.
been my
Yes.
experience
Oh
anyway.
my God. Thank you. Yeah, you're so genuinely, like, you're so grounded, and like when you're speaking about all these different analogies, like it feels like it's coming from a very like a wise place of I've taken time to sit with this and
Mhm.
know just the realities of my world. And that mindset I mean, it's everything. That compassion for self is everything if you do want to succeed in these arenas of motherhood and business, even if it
Mhm.
was just entrepreneurship alone or motherhood alone. I
Mhm.
think even life, extending it to all aspects of life, if we're so hard on ourselves, then I feel
Yes.
like it gives people more of an ammunition to be harder on us too.
Hmm.
Right? We set these high bars of like, you can't mess up, everything has to be perfect. I work a lot, or I used to, still now, with a lot of people that have anxiety or at least symptoms of anxiety, and there's rigidity there, there's
Hmm.
perfectionism there. And
Yes.
so, like, the missing sauces, right? Like, you could have beat yourself so hard over that.
Hmm.
And I'm sure it's come with time of like, accepting it,
For sure.
owning it, all the things. But like in my first year of business, I remember my husband saw me and I was like freaking out because my email server had our real address and I was so scared. I was like,
Hmm.
everybody knows where we live. Mind you,
They're
I'm
all
sure
coming
no
here.
one even cares, literally, and it was just like, what did I do? Like our safety is in
Mm.
jeopardy. Like, you
Right.
just like exasperate all these things where it's like, it's not
Hmm.
that big of a deal.
Right.
It's okay. We had a human error. We're
Hmm.
humans. We'll
Hmm.
fix it for the next email. No big deal.
Hmm.
So grace, grace, self-compassion, slowing down. Would you say those are three like factors that have really helped you stay kind of keep afloat in juggling both?
Absolutely. I mean, I do think the balance that I mentioned is key. Um, and taking the time to, I think you said slow down. I
Mm,
can be a total type A. I'm the same, right? Like do, do,
yeah.
do, do, do. Um,
Yes.
and and at times I will do, 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 and it gets to a level where you're like, whoa, this is too much.
Gotcha.
Um,
Yeah.
but being able to recognize, I think, or just being aware, I think awareness has been huge for me.
Mm,
Um, in just being aware that like, oh, wait a minute, I am doing too much. I need to slow down. I'm not good at it. I
mm,
want to do all the things and I want to take every single order that someone's like, oh, I missed the order I want to take. And I'll take them and take them and take. But at some point, you really have to
mm.
say no.
Yes.
And doing things, I will say, like prior to starting the business, I was stay-at-home mom. I like was going to the gym and da 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 and had this, like I was a massage therapist prior to getting pregnant. Then I had the baby
Okay.
and kind of did stay-at-home mom thing for a while. But I had time to go to the gym and I had time to take him to play and blah blah blah. And then when
Mm,
business started, I mean, I just stopped going to the gym. It just didn't fit anymore, right?
mm.
So I think being able to take those pieces back. I went to the gym
Mm.
this morning, yay.
Yay.
But whatever it is that is your outlet or your thing, and making
Yes.
time for yourself and your family too
Yeah.
is just super important. Balance is always like, I come back to that all the time, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Thank you. Yeah. Again, thank you for your vulnerability and your rawness because I think people have this notion that if you're successful, especially like someone like yourself, your business is really monetarily successful at this
mhm.
time. And they will take that and say, oh, well, then they must have no problems, right? Or everything is going well for you, right? And it's like there is so much happening behind the scenes that are the intricate parts of business that is hard.
It's hard. For example, if I get real honest, last week was like I had gone too far because I want to volunteer for everything and be at every school function and do all the things, right?
Yeah.
And I had extra deliveries that day. So I was out doing deliveries, which I try to get people to do that for me. And it
Okay.
just went too late. And I literally didn't go to a church function. I literally like didn't show up. I mean, I ended up texting after it started, but and that kind of like you were saying, like when you slept for that nap, that is so not me.
Yeah.
But it happened, right? It happened. There was just too much.
Yeah.
But it gave me my like awareness I was talking about. It was like a ding,
Yes.
ding, ding. You need to take a minute and
Yeah.
slow down
Yeah.
and breathe. And
Mm.
none of my people are going to starve to death.
Hmm.
Nothing, like readjust a little bit.
Hmm.
And I actually took this week off to do, I have a bunch of businessy stuff that needs to happen that's behind
Hmm.
the scenes
Yes.
work. And I just
Yeah.
had to take a week. And I did. I sent an email and just said, hey, guess what? New website coming, new things coming, but that takes me time. And so I'm not delivering this week, right? And that
Mm.
was a hard choice to be like, okay, I'm not going to take any orders this week was a big.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think that that's important.
Can you tell us why that was so hard for you?
Oof. I think from a personal standpoint, I just am somebody who likes to take care of everyone, right? And keep caring and caring and caring and caring. And doing for me is often really difficult. Um, but also from a standpoint of here, I'm running this business and I have clients who order every week, right? They're
Mm,
not getting meals this week. Now, like I just said, they're not going to die and they're not going to starve.
mhm.
They will be okay.
Yeah.
But it's probably not super awesome for them when they're used to getting meals every week.
Mhm.
And from a business standpoint, I mean, that's a that's a lot of income coming in that I'm
Mhm.
gonna take out. Um,
Yes.
so I think all three of those things were really major factors. But
Yeah.
when I looked at it from a standpoint of if I take this time and get this website up and running, it is in the long
Yes.
run going to let me serve them better.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
it would have taken me weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks
Got to do both
to
at the
do
same
it on
time.
the end, like a couple bits here and there, instead
Yeah.
of actually just working on it and getting it done in a few days.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah, it also brings to light the reality of yeah, being a business owner and like yes, you do have autonomy over your time and then things just happen sometimes and that's okay.
right.
Literally the visual that I'm getting every single time that you share an experience with us is the meditation thing of like you had a goal, you had a vision and then you're wavering off and say, okay, cool, just bring it back. Right?
Mhm.
And you're learning. You missed a church
Absolutely.
event. Oh, that's letting me know that I put too much on my plate. Cool, we're
Mhm.
bringing it back. It's not that there's this idea of perfection. It's the same way in motherhood, how you have mastery over expecting things to constantly change.
Mhm.
Um, there's a mastery in business where it's like, yes, you're gonna keep flowing in and out and you're learning through the mistakes. And it's, do we have the resilience and positive mindset to get back on track without killing
Right.
ourselves over our mistakes?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I have done a lot of, and this, it kind of all, right, it all ties together, but I've done a lot of work in like conscious discipline parenting and
Mhm.
getting yourself centered first. Uh,
Mhm.
now, granted, that doesn't happen all the time.
Yeah.
And sometimes my response is like, ah.
Mhm.
But when I stop first, even though he's
Mhm.
having a freak out,
Yeah,
it's way less of a freak out when I'm not doing it, right?
right, right. When we're not
It's still
reacting.
there, but it's just
Mhm.
different. If I take a minute and like take a breath, and he'll even say to me, Mom, what are you doing?
I'm
I'm
breathing.
taking a breath so that I can handle this
Yes.
situation. Because if I don't, it's not going to be good. And
Yeah.
same thing I was freaking out a little bit that I missed a church event. I mean, I was volunteering
Mhm.
at it for other children, and I thought, oh my gosh, how did this happen? And I thought, well, it happened. So
Mm.
right now, there's really literally nothing I can do about it. So
Yeah,
let's just stop for a
good
minute. I'll
mindset.
email the person, I'm sorry, I didn't show up. Blah, blah, blah. And I'll show up
Mhm.
next time,
Yeah.
right?
Okay, I want to give our listeners, that's a really good example. So we missed a church event. You could have spiraled and went into, oh my God, I'm a terrible person. How could I
Mhm,
have done this? But maybe that happened initially, but the real turning point that I'm hearing is that you said, okay, well, nothing that I can do about it right now.
mhm,
It's the curiosity factor of, I wonder why this happened,
mhm,
right? That then led you to the realization of, yeah, I had too much on my plate.
mhm.
And so we live and we literally we live and we learn.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think that
Beautiful.
with practice, right, it gets a little shorter and shorter and shorter.
Yes.
Because I still went to exactly what you're talking about, this, oh my gosh, I'm a terrible person. I've never done this before. But
Hmm.
over time and with work, it has just gotten shorter.
Yes.
I still had it, right? And I think letting yourself have that for a minute for me is
Hmm.
like, okay. And I think we do learn a lot of this in parenting, like, okay, well, here we are, right?
Hmm.
And letting yourself have it for a minute. I mean, sometimes momming is hard.
Very hard.
It can just be hard.
Yeah.
And then you can move on, right? I think there's
Yeah.
a lot to be said for letting yourself have the minute of
Real.
this is terrible and blah, 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 blah. And
Hmm.
then, okay, but hold
Just like
on.
we do for our children, we let them have their moments.
Right.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful. Well, I have loved this conversation so, so much. I think it
Great.
just flowed effortlessly.
It was great.
Yeah. So at this time, I'd love to ask you, Kristen, any area of your life, this is like you time to process, reflect. Anything personal going on with you, motherhood, business that maybe we didn't speak about just yet that you would love for me to hold space for?
Hmm. Um, I think that it's really been a really good conversation and let me speak to things that, like, even just being able to say that out loud, right? And know that
Mhm.
people are going to hear this has been so helpful.
Mm,
To just say, like, it isn't perfect,
mhm.
um, but that it's awesome.
Mhm.
Right?
Yeah,
And it's been
yeah.
so awesome. Something, ugh, I'm like hesitant to share, but I think I will.
Okay.
Is something that's been coming up in my head while we're speaking, and this whole idea of how I've been able to do this. And with your background, and I don't know that I need to speak about it, but I think I want to share about it,
Okay.
is that I was just recently 12 years sober.
Okay.
Um,
Congratulations.
and really, what I want to just say about that is lots of the things that I'm able to do have come through that process, right?
Okay.
This is probably a whole nother episode,
That's okay.
but also to just give people, if you're out there and you have anxiety, depression, addiction, the things, right? All these things, um, you can get here. Right? Like how,
Mm.
I mean, if I can share that with anyone, I mean, I can tell you
Yeah.
that 12 years ago, I wasn't having a kid, I wasn't having a business, I wasn't doing anything. Uh,
Mm. Mm.
and I'm here, right? So, like,
Look
life
how
can
much life
change
has turned
and
around.
reach out to someone. And now I'm like a business owner and going on TV shows and being interviewed by you and
Yeah.
serving moms and giving them food and helping them with their families so that
Wow.
there is this thing, right? Because
Mm.
that's really where I think a lot of this comes from in being
Wow.
able to take a minute and to deal is because of therapy and things that I've done over time.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah, your life has turned around beautifully.
It's been amazing.
Yeah.
And it's
Can you,
hard, but it's amazing.
yeah, yeah. Can you share why there was hesitation in sharing that?
Um, so many things, right? Just, who's going to see this, but also I think it's a bigger piece of like, it's okay. And most people are super supportive of that. Um, and sometimes it just feels so big. But I feel like in our world today, the mental health thing and all of these pieces are it's so big. And every time you said it sounds like you've been able to grow or you've been coming like my business has been 18 months, but I've been a mom for
Mm-hmm.
9 years. I've been in recovery for a
Mm-hmm.
long time. And
Mm-hmm.
that's really where all this is coming from, I think.
Mm-hmm. I
The
can see that. Yeah.
ability to take a minute, the ability to look at perspective switch,
Mm-hmm.
the ability to see these things. Every time you said that, I thought, oh, that's really where it started, right? I had to get better first,
Mm-hmm.
and through lots of work and lots of time and lots of life happening.
Mm-hmm.
I've been able to practice these things, and they didn't
Yeah.
come from the last 18 months of business.
Right. Right.
Right. So
Yes.
every time you said that, I thought, you know what, this is really a bigger story. And if
Mm-hmm.
that helps somebody who's listening to be like, oh, wait, I can do all these things too, right?
Yes.
If
Yeah.
I work on myself,
Yes.
and it's a bigger piece than the business or the momming or the, yeah.
Life, just life in general. Yeah. I
Mhm. But
mean,
it's just big.
yeah, so beautiful. Thank you for sharing,
Mhm.
Kristen. I always say that, I mean, for me, psychotherapy, mindset work, it's really applicable to everything in life because what you're working on is the human,
Yeah.
your brain, your heart, your judgments,
Mhm.
your your self-judgment, all of that.
Yeah.
And I can see how 12 years of sobriety, and I'm sure, like you said, a whole other episode that has come with many ups and downs of compassion, grace, one day at a time. And actually, my first full circle, kind of, my first job, well, when I was getting my master's for my mental health degree,
Mhm.
I was interning at a substance abuse program for drugs and
Oh, yeah.
alcohol.
So yeah.
And
So
yeah, I loved it. I loved it so much. I did 2 terms there for my
yeah,
internship.
it's amazing when you see
Yeah.
people literally change lives.
Yeah, rough. It was rough for like from the, from the therapist side of like, oh, that's a whole other conversation,
Whole
but
nother, yeah.
yes.
Hmm.
Yeah, so what was I saying with that? Yeah, so mindset and mental health
Hmm.
in business. Here's my marketing hat, right? We have
Hmm.
what I've learned and what's been working, what I've learned over
Hmm.
time within my marketing is that you have to make it really simple for people to want in,
Hmm.
to identify with the product that you have. And I love what you said prior, like you solved a problem. That's
Hmm.
in the blogs. I don't know if you learned that. So BT for anyone that doesn't know, me and Kristen both had the common background that we were both on the blogs, which was that entrepreneurship show that I was on. So she just came back. Well, I think you went in July, you said?
I was in July. Yeah.
Yeah. So regardless, I remember learning business can be found in two ways. You either solve a problem or you have to teach people about a problem that you are solving,
Hmm.
right? And so for you, there was a need in your community. And so this is why you're having so much traction, which is absolutely
Hmm.
beautiful. When it comes to, at least in my experience for mental health healing and counseling and mindset work, there's usually some education that has to be at the forefront of my marketing to teach people that
Right.
things could be smoother if we fix
Yeah.
this and so the reason why I've niched down to business and mothers is because there is so many similarities, all that we spoke about today, but the truth behind it all is that when you hire a coach or a therapist,
Hmm.
luckily I get to be both.
Yeah.
You're really working on yourself. Yes, it
Hmm.
might be in my containers yourself and pertains and how you
Hmm.
pertain to motherhood and business, but that self-work of what you're alluding to prior that you did for 12 years, maybe even longer, I'm
Right.
sure, that is what has allowed you to kind of gain this muscle of resiliency
Hmm.
of how quickly can we get back to a more compassionate place where I am
Right.
more grounded and I am displaying more self-love for myself so I
Hmm.
can make better decisions moving forward.
Hmm.
Yeah. So I
And
commend you.
the
Yeah.
idea that like whatever you're working on, business, motherhood, and mental health, whatever it is, like just keep practicing, right? Like the day you start is not going to be amazing, right? In anything, like the first day that, right? So, but you were talking about like just practicing, right? And
Mhm.
eventually it becomes uh, second nature. I don't know, that sounds really
Yes.
cliche, but it
Yeah.
is, right? So if you
Yeah.
just keep doing, so if it's business, put your foot out there and put it out there again and put it out there again, right? Or in
Yes.
motherhood, you just keep doing it. Okay, we're going to do
Mm.
this again today, right? All these
Mm.
things.
Yeah.
Um, and just keep going. I mean,
Yeah.
it's also
Be
pretty clear.
open to learning more about yourself through the
Mhm.
process, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
great.
Well, Kristen, this has been a beautiful conversation.
Thank you so much for
Um,
having me.
oh my God, of course. Where can people find you if they want to get in contact with you and order some of those delicious meals?
Yes, my website is Meal Prep Mama, MAMA .me.
Okay.
And then I'm on Instagram as your Meal Prep Mama.
Beautiful. All the links are in our show notes. So if you want to go ahead and get in touch with Kristen, please just look at that, click the link, and you will find her right there. Kristen, it has been an absolute pleasure interviewing you, conversing with you. And thank you. You've made my
Same,
day a little bit more grounded with your energy. So, yeah.
same. Thank you so much.
Yes. Until next time. Bye for now. Thank you for joining me today on Mindset Mastery Podcast. I hope today's conversation inspired you to embrace your own journey of balancing motherhood and entrepreneurship. Remember, it's all about mastering your mindset to create a life of success and fulfillment in both areas. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, share it with a friend, and leave a review. Your support helps us reach more incredible moms just like you. Until next time, keep showing up, keep growing, and mastering your mindset.